Hello and welcome back to what should be an interesting episode. Today, I think it might be even today it was released, but today I picked up the Batman vs Superman DVD. This is not the deluxe super mega edition because apparently you can't fit half an hour of extra footage on a DVD, which is bullshit. But this is the edition that was released in theatres, and I didn't get to see it in the theatre because I heard such bad things about the film. I didn't want to, to waste 15, 30 quid if both me and my wife had gone. So I've got it today for a tenner from the local supermarket. I've invited a friend over to watch it. We've got crisps, we've got beerses, multiple beerses because it may be required. And when I'm done, I will record my thoughts for you on this camera. The camera won't move. This is going to be like some sort of weird, old school time jump that they used to do in Hollywood, and people had their minds blown. So this should be interesting. I may be a bit drunk when you next see me, but I don't know. I want to like bits of this film at least. I want to like bits of it. So here's hoping.
Thermal imaging is showing me 24 hostiles on the 3rd floor. Why don't I drop you off on the 2nd?
Okay, so 2.5 hours later, 151 minutes to be exact, and well, my friend has now gone home, and that was an interesting film to watch. Now, I've made an extensive list of notes here, which start with actually several very prominent positives. For example, I love the opening with Bruce narrating. There was a time before this. There was a time before, for example, his parents were lost. And I love it in terms of the epicness, if I want a better word, the impact that Bruce and Superman story should have. The visual of the pearls, for example, when his parents are killed, is very, very good. It's one which hasn't really properly been focused on in movies for a good long while. It's something which appears very prominently, for example, in Batman Year 2, which is one of my favourite ever Batman stories, and I'm pleased that it's there, even though Bruce's father, for some reason, seems to have some sort of porn star moustache. But that's one side. I do absolutely adore the destruction of Metropolis from Bruce's perspective. I think that is a very necessary thing. No pun whatsoever remotely intended. This has been very necessary. To what is in fact a great Clark. Clark Kent is in this film superb. His oversized glasses, his persona. As much as we are allowed to perceive his persona, is very well rendered. It is in fact, obviously very much in line with the classic Superman movies and Christopher Reeve, this kind of thing. But it's something which I very much appreciate. I really do. Just as much as I appreciated the introduction to Batman, with the bats flying out of the chimney, and Batman hiding in the corner of the room, scooting across the ceiling like some sort of monster away from the policeman with the shotgun. There's lots of positives in this film. There really are. I did mention that I would be a little bit tipsy, didn't I? Yes. Another positive is that actually Alfred is really great. Alfred's cynicism, his sort of the whole thing of and we'll have to have to hope for a next generation of Waynes, but that's unlikely, isn't it? Is perfect for this film. It's also perfect for the time frame. This sort of whole Dark Knight time frame which the film is very deliberately set up for is spot on. I really very much like the way that we dive into a new case for Bruce and Alfred at this point in the film. That we see that Bruce is investigating, but also Alfred is also on top of trying to keep Bruce on the right side of the tracks. The whole new rules. When you've branded people, that's clearly a very different step, isn't it? But Bruce is like, no, we've always been criminals, Alfred. We've always been criminals. Shut up. But it's good. It's good stuff. It's good DC comic stuff, and I appreciate that. I also, oddly enough, appreciate that Lex Jr., I guess, is playing basketball in the lobby of his office. It's very much like a Google, kind of setup, where people are having fun at work. It seems to make sense. This whole idea of a meta-human thesis that he has submitted, this sort of fear that somehow people out there are going to overtake the world, that we need to consider meta-humans in future defense scenarios, makes, again, a lot of sense. It fits in very nicely with some of the themes which we've seen in the Suicide Squad trailers so far, which I'll hopefully be seeing on Thursday, Friday evening. But also, as well, it fits in very well with a man who is deeply cynical about whether or not people with special abilities are in fact here and can be here to help us. The problem is, though, that this film feels very much like a fast-paced series of happenings as opposed to a narrative. And by that, I mean, oddly enough, actually, The Dark Knight, one of these films which is held up, by so many people as being the best of the Batman films. I think it's the second best after Batman Begins, but, The Dark Knight is also actually a series of happenings. There are things in this film which make no continuative narrative sense, just as they didn't actually in The Dark Knight. If you look at, for example, when we're first introduced to Harvey Dent knowing who you're talking to Bruce's girlfriend. I've forgotten what her name is now. Obviously, again, I promised you I'd be tipsy. The narrative in that film wasn't precisely easy to follow, and in that sense, this film is very similar. But this film, though, does not do any world building. This film is all about world happening. Every single scene relies on you relies on you knowing that who someone is, what they know, what they don't know, and what they've just discovered, and how each scene, in fact, adds to the apparent sort of fast-paced narrative, and therefore it's a little bit frustrating to watch. I very much liked the false god thing, where your man with the no legs climbs up onto the statue of spray paints false god, but I didn't really fully understand how it was that Lex was able to gain access to a crashed Kryptonian ship. By the way, spoilers, just in case you didn't know. I thought that was a little bit odd. I mean, it makes sense in so much as, again, I suppose I sort of appreciate that clearly there'll be physical repercussions, that is, crashed ships following the events in Man of Steel. But how is Lex actually able to fully do that? I'm not entirely sure. Bruce's dreams, he says, taking a big sip, were very interesting. They relied on you already being in on the joke. And I mean that. I say that very deliberately. A whole host of this film is in fact dependent upon people being in on what is already going on. This applies to Bruce's dream in terms of the dark side and the Omega beam. It applies to Bruce's dream in particular, for example, when he apparently goes back to the Wayne estate and he sees his mother's grave and he sees blood oozing from that tomb, and then suddenly this monstrous bat bites him on the neck. I can sort of see where Zack is going. Zack as a director, Zack Snyder, going with this, in terms so much as there's this very strong Nosferatu kind of pedigree going on, but it sort of serves to alienate people. I think it feels a little bit as though if you weren't already aware of the potential, in particular in DC Comics, to be a little bit sort of figurative, you might feel a little bit as though you're sort of being subjected to something which is very, very surreal, and in that sense, I suppose, very very unexpected. In that sense, Iron Man and Iron Man 2, for example, didn't have the character of Thanos, did they? No, very deliberately. I don't know. Yeah, obviously we're at the beginnings of the DC EU expanded universe, but it feels like they're trying to jump ahead a little bit too soon, and I hope that they're not going to overstep themselves. I loved the reference that Alfred makes to Bruce taking to deception as Mozart to the piano. That was beautiful, absolutely beautiful reference, and really again just sort of cements my love of this particular version of Alfred. It's almost as though Bruce is in fact three different people. Bruce is a useful identity for furthering investigations. Batman is a useful person and identity for furthering interrogations. And Bruce, as a little boy, I guess as a little man, who Alfred cares about, is somewhere in the middle. And I did very much appreciate that. I absolutely love in this context that Bruce is useful for gaining access to Lex's party. Alfred points this out, and also Clark, as Superman in disguise, hears Alfred in Bruce's ear. This is a beautiful and elegant way to introduce these two characters to each other. It's very clever, actually. The Superman, of course, he can hear what's in your ear, and it works very, very well indeed. Next, I really truly love the vision of Batman stood on a crane at the docks. These simple little moments really please me deeply. I mean, they please me in the Nolan trilogy, but also here, especially with the musical accompaniments, they kind of emphasise a sort of gothic, no pun intended, Gotham gothicness to Batman, and I very much appreciated that. It's also clear that also Batman at this point gives no fucks. Has no fucks to give. He's killing people right, left, and centre. And yes, of course, it is revealed that in this sort of in this mayhem, he attaches a tracker to Lex's truck. But it's also as well very much classically un-Batman-like, and that's something which I don't particularly appreciate. I don't like my Batman as a killer. I like my Batman as a breaker of bones, as a hardcore vigilante, but not necessarily as someone who kills people, especially kills people by accident. For example, emerging in a Batmobile from a building and crushing a truck from behind. I love that Clark's mother tells him he doesn't owe this world anything. He doesn't have to do a damn thing. I love that, especially in the context of so many sort of other narratives which often seem to portray Superman in particular, but also Batman, I guess. But Superman in particular is someone who is inevitably drawn to being a good and for the righteous cause type of person. I like that actually that Martha is in fact shown as being someone who has a sense of, I guess, family defense. You don't owe anyone anything, and I love you and I want you to survive. Damn right. I very much like the way that those checks are revealed in the movie with little notes written, and that somehow Bruce said it should have received these in person an awful lot sooner, but his people were protecting him from it. I also feel as though that should have been a little bit more carefully drawn out, almost like a Riddler type story. It's it's a 10-second, 15, 20-second sort of reveal, whereas it should have been something which was being being slapped on his desk throughout the movie, and therefore actually I think it's slightly sort of suffered because of that. But it was a clever attempt. Lex's nefarious machinations at the Capitol building are entertaining, but ultimately, how on earth does Mercy survive? I don't understand. The whole building explodes around Superman because of it is hinted because of Grandma's peach tea, but hey ho. Superman though in the scene is very much portrayed as a character surrounded by death, and that is very, very important, and also actually very, very interesting. It is something which I appreciate from a storytelling perspective, because he is immune to so much which causes us death in this life. But at this point, I found myself thinking that this should have been at least 2 films. There's far too much going on in this movie to be one movie. And at 3.5 hours long, perhaps actually there's a hint there that maybe there should have been, in fact, 2 films. What's odd though is that we hear that apparently Lex has been setting this up for 2 years. Where's the context for that? This film feels very much, as I've said, like a series of happenings, like a constant ongoing narrative, as opposed to, and indeed something which you have to stitch together yourself, as opposed to something which is actually happening over a very long period of time. So the hint that somehow Lex has been working on this for 2 years is kind of, kind of strange. The CGI in this movie, especially in the Batman fight, kind of hurts the pace somewhat. You don't really feel as though things are actually at stake, because you know that 1 or 2 of the people portrayed in the imagery aren't real. And this is I don't know, kind of strange, because it also ends up hurting the pace of the film, because actually the battle slows things down. Now, isn't that strange that in a movie where we've had this sort of fast-paced, sort of journalistic, non-stop kind of style, somehow the fight between Batman and Superman, Batman versus motherfucking Superman, that slows things down? What? I found that kind of strange, and a little bit disappointing, if I'm honest. Now, obviously, there's the whole thing about Martha, and that being Batman's reason to change his mind in terms of killing Superman. I think it's clever. Very clever, because it's not really something which I had reflected upon before, but I also think that it was handled very, very clumsily. This very clever idea was revealed in a way which was kind of like, ta-da! But actually ultimately ended up being really, really very, very clumsy indeed. Which is, a bit of a shame. This whole sequence leads to the fastest costume change ever. Lois hiding the spear, Batman killing people on his way to try and rescue Martha, as in Superman's mother. But then also, probably one of the very best Batman scenes ever seen. The scene in the second floor of the warehouse where Martha is being held is by far one of the most impressive and incredible Batman fight scenes ever put to film. Now the thing is, why do I feel so unhappy about saying that? Well, it might be because of the pace at which this film unfolds. The problem is that before we know it, we have this whole thing of, I'm a friend of your son's. And she's like, yeah, I thought you might because you wear a cape. What? Within seconds, suddenly you're a friend of Superman's? It doesn't make any narrative sense. Then we have Doomsday turning up, which is an absolute complete and utter total load of crap. I won't even get into the security implementations of, or lack thereof, in terms of Lex accessing a Kryptonian ship. But then we have little sparks of absolute amazingness, and so we have Superman, with the nuclear weapon becoming emaciated in space, something which is just spot on from The Dark Knight Returns. I found myself very much tortured by this film. So Wonder Woman is incredible. The music for Wonder Woman is spot on, and as we've seen in the trailer for the upcoming movie, she is probably going to be amazing. The fact that we have the Trinity present at Superman's death, essentially, we have Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, is beautiful. The fact that we have, but then we have Lois in in Superman's bedroom, like some sort of some woman who's deeply lost her adoring husband, and it's just not been earned. He didn't even give her an engagement ring. That was given to her by someone else in this film. And then we have the funeral of Superman, which is both iconic and entirely unearned. It's so strange. It's so strange. I absolutely love the silhouette of the Undertaker on the cart at Superman's funeral. I love that Bruce was there in the background, and so was Wonder Woman. And to a certain extent, I also appreciate the presence of Lois. But again, the whole thing just feels unearned. It feels as though there should have been a few movies in. We should have had the opportunity to have a little bit of fun with Superman. And in that sense, a little bit like the Iron Man movie. Iron Man was fun. Iron Man 2 was less fun. Iron Man 3 was far less fun. But the point is, you sort of, you're adding to the character all the way through. In this instance, we haven't had the ability to really feel the depth of loss which apparently these characters are feeling on screen. And so the whole film, again, I come back to this notion of it being a series of happenings as opposed to a narrative which unfolds. And so we can only hope that Suicide Squad on Friday, in a few days' time, will take its time. Take your time. Take your time, DC Comics. Please, I'm begging you. Just relax and let these characters tell the story that they want to tell. Because you've got some great ingredients here. But they haven't been necessarily deployed to the greatest effect in this movie. Anyway, guys, as ever, hopefully this has been interesting for you. I am, in fact, rather happily tipsy after a few bottles of beer and a few cans. As ever, until next time, do take care. Bye-bye.